Okay, so I want to talk to you guys today about some visual note-taking strategies. And just full disclaimer, this is a presentation that I stole from my wonderful and talented art teacher friend, Jennifer Ramey, also an artist. She says, "Make things, know thyself." So we live in a visual culture. We are visual creatures. We have a visual brain. A huge part of our brain is devoted to understanding things that we perceive with our eyes. And we even speak in visual metaphors to understand the world around us. So next time you hear somebody say a metaphor, just think like, what is the visual that comes to mind? And then another thing I've been talking to people about with visual note taking as a strategy is the way that I'll do maybe a neuroscience version of this at one point, but the way we learn is we form neural networks, right? Neurons are talking to each other in our brain. And we've got all these networks and they talk to each other if we make connections between them. And the more often you use a neural pathway, the stronger it gets and the easier it is to bring it up into your short-term memory. So if there's something on the tip of your tongue, it's back there in your brain and you've got some recall failure. You're not able to recall into your short-term memory. But the more pathways you have to that thing, right, the more connections you've made to other neural networks, so you can get back there in multiple ways. And the more often you use those pathways, or the more visual those pathways are, the easier it is to bring it back up to the forefront. So that is some of my arguments for why visual note-taking is important. Also, I think it's super important because no one takes notes to look back on them later and read through them to study. Okay, like that happens occasionally, sure. But the majority of the reason why we recommend note taking and why people do take notes just naturally when they're interested in something is because it is helpful in the process of learning. So you're taking information and you're actually like utilizing it in a new format. So you're taking it through the filter of your brain and doing something with it, even if it's just note taking. And that's why I also argue that visual note taking is a better form of notes because it forces you to use the information in a more critical way, in a more thoughtful way. So the act of taking notes is actually like helping to learn the material. So what am I talking about here? So visual notes doesn't equal a bunch of pretty pictures. It doesn't equal, holy crap, I'm a beautiful artist. It just means that you've thought in a more visual context way. That could even be as far as like setting up some kind of hierarchy with a main idea and sub ideas and smaller details. You can use really helpful tricks like changing the way that you do your text, just bolding it or making block letters. Bigger text equals bigger idea. Smaller text equals smaller idea, right? Images, really quick ones like stars or question marks or exclamation points. Those are a really great example of quick images. Using arrows to connect ideas. Using people is actually very helpful because we're empathetic creatures, and when we have like a human connection, it helps us to remember things better. So there's this great Starman and Toothman coming up here in a second. Spoilers. Going back and using colors as you take notes, underlining, bolding, framing. Frames are also super helpful. Speech bubbles, and there's a really great video that I'm not going to show you, but I will link to by Sketcho Frenzy on some visual note-taking basics. So why, I already kind of went through this, but it does, like a lot of our brain is dedicated to visuals than any other sense. It enhances our memory. It improves our understanding. It makes notes yours. This isn't for anybody else but you. This is for you. And it's way more fun. And honestly, when I look back through my notes, I'm like, whoa, I totally remember this talk. Like I remember Heidi talking about the importance of phonology cycles or whatever. Anyway, so they're here to help you. It's about getting the ideas out, not about the drawings. So don't spend a lot of time on the drawings themselves. That's not the point here. Just get big key ideas and follow along with the speaker. And these get easier as you practice. The first time you try this out, it might feel a little clumsy or clunky or it might be taking a long time, but just stick with it. And the more you do it, like the better at it you'll get and the easier it will become. I've actually gotten to the point where when I'm listening to a lecture, this is my preferred note-taking style because it really does make me like super engaged with that lecturer. Yeah, and then connect your ideas later. So you can go back and emphasize with color. And that also helps you to like remember the material that you just talked about. Like, oh yeah, that was awesome. Or put in other context or things that you've learned from outside of that lecture. These are just some helpful tools. Like I know, like just thinking about these for people who aren't necessarily like feeling super artistic, just be really helpful. Or people who are, little tricks. So speech balloons versus thought bubbles, I wonder, versus captions, maybe trying to capture a quote. Letters, changing up how you do them, maybe some cursive, block letters, bubble letters, bolded, going over letters a bunch of times if it's a big idea or something that's been coming back to over and over. Use different bullets. Like I challenge you to come up with as many different ways to have bulleted lists as you possibly can, including maybe the meta, the bullet itself. Frames, I've been getting really into this banner one because it's super easy. It's just like a rectangle and then you put these little polygons on the side of it. Bam, you got a banner. 3-dimensional. Also, that 3D kind of helps trick our brain into thinking about it in more visual ways, which is why shadows are also helpful. Just a couple of quick lines make the shadow. Connectors like arrows or dashed lines or spirals or little dots or just zigzaggies. And then peeps. Don't forget the peeps. And so a couple quick peep ideas are, yes, you can do stick man, but you could take it a step further. And you can do Tooth Man. I like to do Tooth Man if I'm drawing like a bunch of people in a crowd. Starman is a really quick, easy one that can be very emotive. Right? This is Starman dancing. This is Starman pointing to something. This is neutral Starman. This is excited Starman. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He like to come meet us. Okay, so these are just some examples to give you an idea of what this could look like. I like taking whatever the central topic is and putting it at the center of a page, and maybe using an image there. And note that this person is using lined paper, and I'm going to advocate for unlined paper. I think that gives you a little bit more of a free canvas, if you will. And this, I think, is an awesome example. Like all of these tendrils coming off of this main idea of energy, capacity for work, conservation, and you can tell they get more and more detail as the tendrils go further out. And this person is like, they're doing awesome, like they're not spending a ton of time making beautiful imagery, but they kind of get the message across quickly. Here's another great example. I know you probably have seen a lot of those like whiteboard artist people, and they have obviously practiced this a lot and have gotten really good at it, but they can be helpful to study like their ones. And then I'll show you some of mine actually real quick here. So this is some notes that I took on a thing that I learned called Since Time Immemorial about tribal sovereignty. I went to a talk by someone from NOAA about the Dungeness crab. This is one that was sort of a little bit more, I was starting with a mind map on cultural ecosystems of Washington, but then I actually had a bunch of other ideas. I usually like to put the date and the topic and maybe the speaker up in a corner so I can know like, oh, what was that? This one has a clear title and these different bubbles I was just using for different topics that were being talked about. This one, again, kind of mind map-ish with these 4 different quadrants. So you can clearly tell that I favor bubbles. And sometimes if there's like a graph or an image being shared, I also try to quickly sketch those out because it can be helpful for capturing a lot of complex ideas in a simple form. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Am I right? Am I right? Okay. So we should practice a little bit. And so I just want you to grab a piece of paper and pencil, and let's practice the idea of cold. Draw cold. You can pause and keep drawing, but some ideas were ice cube, temperatures, be shivering, a snowflake. And then I want you to pick from this list one word, maybe try this a few times, so you'll do like 3 words in total, and give yourself 1 minute on a timer and try to sketch as many visual like images as you can for that word. Okay, if you need to pause the video for that, go for it. But I am running out of time, so I'm just gonna, well, there is one more exercise, which is trying to take this passage and do some visual notes from this passage. So again, practice, pause the video, read this as you take some visual notes, as some practice ideas, and then this is helpful for seeing the main points of this and things that could be visualized. That was a little bit quick.